From auto racing's friendly confines, Martinsville, Virginia, to the wide open spaces of the Southwest, we're in Texas for NASCAR Sprint Cup practice. 60 degrees, was chilly this morning. It's going to bust past 70 later on this afternoon here at the Great American Speedway just north of Fort Worth. A little bit of a breeze, keep things interesting. Nothing like the 35-mile-an-hour winds of yesterday. And the forecast is for sunny all day. Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip without our 10-gallon hats, but ready to go racing here at Texas. And what a difference from last week on the half-mile paperclip of Martinsville Speedway. Wide open spaces, plenty of room to race, plenty of speed.
Oh, yeah, this is when you want a little giddy up in your step right here. And this is when you get to whip out and beat this old car like it's a rented mule. I mean, you want to get all out of this thing. Hammond. Yeah, that's right. Beat it up like old Hammond. This one you want to get all out of it she's got. You go down in the corner down here at 210 miles an hour. Exciting, fun to watch.
And I think the biggest thing is when you look at the forecast here at Texas Motor Speedway this weekend, unlike last week at Martinsville, the forecast is great for all 3 days. This is a 500-mile race on Sunday. This is where the engine guy never quits biting his nails until you put it on the truck after the race. So I think what you'll see with the 48 cars that we have here, most of them will be working on qualifying runs only during this hour-and-a-half practice session, and then in the 2 one-hour sessions tomorrow, that's when they'll get down and dirty and get those things ready to race 500 miles.
Practice session now for an hour and a half, then there'll be a break of about the same length, and then qualifying this afternoon right here on speed. Now,
see, nobody's panicking just yet.
Yeah. There were a number of drivers usually at the front of the practice line, like Jimmy Johnson, Mark Martin, who were much further back.
Well, you normally go to racetrack. You can practice all you want to, but again, as Larry was referring to there, this is a long race. We know this joint will suck the guts right out of one of these engines if you put too many miles on them. It's high speed. The engine never rests here. And so you don't want to practice any more than you have to.
Mark Martin's run only 1 lap, but it is the fastest lap of the day. Kyle Busch is 8th on the chart.
Mark's got that down pat, hasn't he?
Yep.
I mean, he's been on the pole a couple of times already this year. There he is, top of the chart.
Tell you what, that's a pretty sporty lap. 28.46. that he has laid down right now, and that's almost 190 miles per hour average. Now the track record here is a little over 196 miles per hour. I think we're going to see speeds faster than we've ever seen with this new car here that we only raced last year in 2008. Goodyear has brought a little different left side tire, as we have seen a lot of places. It's softer compound. It grips the racetrack better, gives the driver a better feel, and I think for that reason, plus maybe cooler conditions later on in the afternoon, we're going to see some pretty fast qualifying speeds.
Probably nobody was happier to get out of Martinsville than Matt Kenseth. Got caught a lap down early and never could get it back. Despite all he did to try to be in the free pass position, was mired a lap down all day.
Yeah, his boys in the pits here, Drew Brickensler and those guys, they were not happy about what happened to them.
But you know, their slide almost started when the engine let go on that race car before lap 10 at Las Vegas. They won the first 2 races, and Mike, since then, they've only had 1 top 20 finish, and that was 12th at Atlanta a few weeks ago. So the slide started almost when they blew the engine at Vegas.
Right. Since he won those 2 races, he has not led a lap or finished in the top 10, and has fallen from 1st to 12th in the Sprint Cup standings.
But this is a racetrack that the boys with the cat in the hat, they seem to like. Carl Edwards swept the 2 races last year. Roush Fenway, they have 7 wins here total.
I think this guy right here you see on the screen, Ryan Newman, coming off a great Martinsville. I mean, they really needed that because they'd had to kind of had the monkey on their back. And of course, we know how the Rocket is. He likes to go fast. So maybe they lit the fuse at Martinsville last week, and we're going to see the results here this week.
There's more than a little Ricky Bobby in him.
Oh, yeah.
Carl Edwards is 10th on the speed chart right now with a 29.89. Here's Chris Devoto.
Well, Mike, Larry, Darrell, you guys mentioned the sweep. Carl Edwards, the first to ever do that at Texas last year, and all of the numbers point to him. He has only raced in half of the Texas races, 8 total, yet he leads more laps here than anyone else. Number 14, Tony Stewart, is next closest, and Carl leads him by 14 laps. And Carl said he has extra motivation. We talked about how good the Roush cars are here. That is his motivation to come in and do it again. Right now, he's taking his next shot at that. You know, Terrell Owens may be gone from Dallas. He's no longer a Cowboy. Carl Edwards is the top Cowboy right now, Matt Yoakum.
And Christopher, when you look at Jeff Gordon's racing resume, not many drivers can match what he's done throughout his Sprint Cup Series career, but he'll tell you he's got 2 big check marks left. He's never won a race at the Homestead Miami Speedway, and he's never won a race here at the Great American Speedway, the Texas Motor Speedway. He brought the same car that they almost won with at the sister track in Atlanta, finished second. They're very stout about that. Jeff Gordon got out of his race car at Martinsville after the great top 5 they had there. He says, you know what, the way we've run this year and the way we've run on the mile-and-a-half tracks, I cannot wait to get to Texas. This team very jacked up about their chances here this weekend.
Tell you what, I did talk to Steve Letarte, Jeff Gordon's crew chief, this morning, and they do feel awfully good about their opportunity this weekend, because Texas has not been a good racetrack for them, as Matt alluded to.
I like that car. I like the paint job on that car.
Top of the board, Mark Martin and Marcus Ambrose.
His boot.
Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice is brought to you by True Value, the tools, products, and expert advice for all your project needs. True Value. Start right, start here.
Yo, Hammond went out. He went out riding yesterday. He would have rode a lot longer, but he ran out of quarters, and he had
We talked earlier about the great Sunday at Martinsville for Stewart-Haas Racing, not just for Ryan Newman, but for Tony Stewart as well.
And you've got to believe that Tony is breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief, because, you know, even though he was confident going into this Stewart-Haas program, let's face it, he walked away from a race team. He won 30-something races and 2 championships into an operation that struggled to even be in the top 35 last year. So you've got to believe Tony is breathing a little easier today than he was a couple of months ago.
You got that right, and that was a great. I mean, I thought he had that race at Martinsville given to him last week when the 48 and 11 got together going in turn 3. He was sitting in a catbird seat, just wasn't quite close enough.
Dale Jr. had a strong first half of the race at Martinsville, and you could hear that he's on a qualifying path.
Yeah, look at there, jumped up there to second too, right behind his teammate Mark Martin.
Tell you what, that lap Mark Martin laid down, that's a pretty nice lap, because Dale Earnhardt Jr. second. That's the good news. The bad news is you're 2/10 slower than your teammate.
That's a heck of a lap.
Dale Jr. has led only 1 lap this season and stands 16th in the points. He does lead the league in 1 category. He's had the free pass 6 times. No one else has had it more than twice.
Yeah, but he loves Texas.
Yes.
There's a lot of good things have happened to him here at Texas.
Well, he got his very first Nationwide Series win here in 1998, and then followed it up in 2000. His rookie season got his very first career Sprint Cup Series win.
Look good.
And last year,
that bottom up here, look real good.
Dale Jr.'s qualifying lap was the fastest qualifying lap of all of 2008. Now, here's a driver who did not have a good Martinsville.
No, he didn't. But
well publicized. Kurt Busch's tirade over the radio with car owner Roger Penske, who essentially told Kurt that if he didn't want to drive the car, bring it in. Harsh words all over the place from the number 2, another of those cars that really thought they were going to have a good run at Martinsville.
But I think good news is, if you think back to Atlanta, very similar racetrack, almost a sister to this place, and now he led 234 laps at Atlanta of that race down there, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him not have that same car and probably that same package.
Well, it's not, DW.
Oh, no.
There's a lot of surprise to that.
Well, I am surprised.
Yes. Pat Trice and his crew chief told me this is a brand new, there's Pat right there on top of the 2-hauler. This is a brand new race car they brought here. They felt like the car that they won Atlanta with was more suited for Lowe's Motor Speedway coming up at the Coca-Cola 600 in late May.
A little strategy being played out. But you know, one thing I noticed about it, think back to this time last year, Larry, and you and I were standing up here, and I said, Larry, dang, Carl Edwards going in the corner spun out. Because we can see him go down into turn 1 here, and I said, his back end is out. It's getting there before his front end is. What's going on here? Something's weird about that car. That's when we got on to, and that's when we probably alerted the entire garage area.
And by the time we got the lows, everybody
had the rear end skewed out on the cars. But I think that was an advantage that Carl and his crowd had early on last year that the others took a little while to catch on to.
And you know what's interesting about Kurt Busch, of course, even after the couple of stumbles on the short tracks, he comes here to third in the points. Kurt had a great quote this past week. He said, especially with no testing, when you look at the last 8 races of NASCAR on Fox, starting at Martinsville last week all the way through Dover in early May, of those 8 racetracks we go to, 6 of them have races in the chase. So it's important to gather information now in the spring in preparation for those chase races in the fall.
Well, Kristen Dale Jr.'s had a busy afternoon. He's run, let's see, 1 lap.
He's out of the car right now. He said it's a little snug, and he was specific. He said it's a little snug. He kind of paused. He said first half of the corner, that's where it's a little tight. Tony Eury Jr. told him, you look good, Junior. Stuck to the bottom. So they're just making a couple changes. Dale Jr. will get back in the car and do more than 1 lap.
Okay. He is second to his teammate Mark Martin on the practice chart. Robbie Gordon has jumped up to third ahead of Marcus Ambrose, Paul Menard, and Regan Smith. Mark Martin, Dale Jr., Robbie Gordon still on top of the practice chart. Marcus Ambrose, Paul Menard, and Regan Smith. Here is Denny Hamlin, who had a great race at Martinsville, came up just a little short at the finish, finished second to Jimmy Johnson. He is 33rd on the board right now, but he's run as many laps as anybody, Matt. He's run 10 laps.
And Mike, it's good news and bad news if you're a Denny Hamlin fan. Now he enters Texas. He's 5th in the championship points. You mentioned great run last week, great run the week before, 2 seconds. He's on the right side of the board, though. He said the car wasn't too bad, just a touch free on entry and on exit. So Mike Ford, his crew chief, called for a shock change in the rear. Mike also did note, though, to Denny, that the timesheet showed that after about the first 4 laps, they were just as good as anybody else, but still trying to get this car a lot better early on in this practice session.
I just think talking to a lot of crew chiefs is one reason a lot of them elected not to work too much on race runs. Until this racetrack really gets some rubber on it, it's an ever-changing racetrack as we start to get closer and closer to Sunday.
Yeah, I wouldn't be real worried about or even concerned about or happy about my car real good right now on a long run, because the track is going to go through a lot of changes before you really can anticipate what that's going to be like.
Casey Kane, 9th on the speed chart, and he is the only driver to win here from the pole in the 16 race history at Texas Motor Speedway.
You know, I know this group, the Richard Petty Motorsports group, say that the engine that the Penske cars are running, the new Dodge engine, they are not comfortable going to it just yet. But I also would kind of like to see what that 9 car would run like if it had one in it, because according to the Penske group, it's much better. And they're running it, and they won a race already.
Yeah, only one Dodge has won a race this year, and it had that engine. So
I understand inventory, and you got, you know, a team like that with multi-cars, they probably got 100+ engines.
Yes, no
and you
question.
can't throw those all away and just get all new ones. I kind of understand that, but I think I'd be slipping a new one in every now and then.
Greg Biffle just ran a lap that put him 12th on the board. The 3M Ford of Jack Roush.
And just to follow up a little bit more about that, because I did hear Mark McConnell talking about this, it's not so much just taking one out and putting the other in. It's so different that it requires a lot of changes to the race car itself. Ooh. Now, I don't know how extensive those changes are, but I mean, I have seen the case where you've had to revamp the whole front snout in order to get an engine to fit in a car.
It's like the Chevrolet teams as they went from the SP2 to the R07. I mean, it's completely different the way the motor mounts, exhaust systems, everything. It's like building a new car almost.
And that was what I was going to say, Larry. So if you got to get rid of all your old engines and buy new ones, and then you got a race car that you've got to rebuild, I mean, you're talking about a pretty expensive little proposition there. So I'm sure that has some factor into it.
Sam Hornish has run 11 laps, and he is 18th in this practice session in the Mobile One Dodge.
Now, normally Sam's car would be dog tracking more than anybody's. He'd have the back end of it kicked way out. I don't really see many of these cars that look that out of line this weekend. I think maybe we're getting used to seeing them.
Well, I think Sam was more, what do you like to say, a rule maker than a rule breaker.
Boy, he went to the extreme.
The rules are different than when we were here last.
Yeah.
And I think we need to explain why teams were doing the cocking of the rear end. It has nothing to do with necessarily mechanical grip. It's about aero. If you look at the sides of these race cars, it's almost like just a flat piece of plywood. And so what you're trying to do is almost get that piece of plywood out in the air, and not talking about downforce, pressure on the nose or the back of the car. It's side force in the sides of the car, and it makes the car drive better.
Yeah, it actually would probably slow the car down a skosh on the straightaway.
Right.
But the straightaways aren't that long. What do they deal with the most? The turns, and that's where the speed comes in.
And basically, it made all the cars go kittywampus down the straightaways. They didn't look right. NASCAR said, knock it off.
Yeah, Hornish's car was so bad at Charlotte, they had to put it. They couldn't get it in the garage door. It wouldn't drive in. They had to put a jack under it, pull the back end around, and get it in the garage.
And they can still do it. It's just they're limited now how much they can do it.
You look for Jamie McMurray, Valvoline, and Sears Auto Centers teaming up on the number 26 this week. Now, April is Autism Awareness Month, and Lowe's Motor Speedway joins with Autism Speaks and Speed for a special ticket promotion for the Sprint All-Star Race Saturday night, May 16th. Lowe's Motor Speedway will donate $10 for every ticket sold from now through April 10th. So come see some great NASCAR racing on all its stars while supporting a great cause. There's the 800 number and the website, and tickets start at just $25 to the Sprint All-Star Race. And if you're not lucky enough to be at the track, you can only see it on Speed, but there is a great ticket deal for a great cause.
And I cannot wait for that All-Star race, because we're finally back to the old 10-lap shootout.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the way it ought to be. You know, one of the things that has improved dramatically this year, the cars, yes, they've improved them some. There's only so much you can do to that car. We know that. But the tires. Yeah. Goodyear, I think they have finally gotten their arms around what this car likes for a tire combination. We saw at Vegas, probably the best tire track car combination that I've seen for quite some time since we went to the COT. And we may very well see that here today. I'm not so sure that I wouldn't run that Vegas tire everywhere.
Yeah. Now here's a car that I'm surprised the media has not much picked up on, the budding rivalry between Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch. And it all deals with the Saturday Support Series. At Atlanta, Harvick's gas man doesn't get a good fill on the last pit stop, and Kyle Busch is able to beat Harvick in the truck race. Move on to Bristol, and Kyle's crew rolls a tire out into the pit lane. Harvick wins. Okay, no harm, no foul. What happened on Monday at Martinsville in the trucks? Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick pretty much beat the snot out of each other's trucks in the closing stages of that race. And I'm just wondering, how big a rivalry is this between these two?
And Kevin Harvick, he never met a rivalry he didn't love. If you think back to the days of him and Greg Biffle in the early 2000s.
Or like me, never met one he couldn't add to.
So stay tuned. I think we're going to hear a lot more from 18 versus 33.
All-Star race is a special race in itself, just because we're all at home. We all have home field advantage. Everybody's there. Everybody's family's there from every team member, and so you're all racing for glory and the money, basically. There's no points.
He's going to get him pushed up, and he's going to get under him right here. Here he goes.
He has to run. He'll lead this lap. He's got him. Robbie Gordon, the 31, he got a good run.
We weren't even in the show to start the night, and that's what made it so I guess extra special towards the end when we won, that we made it from the outside in, started last, and came back through, and you know, had a good race with Dale Jr. to you know, for the fans to be able to make it back to the start-finish line to win the race.
Junior is there. Bumper tag.
Now see, Junior respected him. He could have taken him around right there.
And he lost some ground because he had to back off the throttle there.
Last chance.
He may not respect him here, though. Now he pushed up, drove in hard,
Don't think he can do it. And Ryan Newman is going to win the Winston race.
Celebrating 25 years of All-Star memories. Don't miss the NASCAR Sprint All-Star Race on Speed May 16th. NASCAR on Speed. Be there.
Boy, that was a performance. From last to first. That was quite a night for Ryan Newman.
Yeah, it's a good thing that car behind him had an 8 on it, not a 3. It wouldn't have been a big night for him.
Maybe so. It's been a big season for this young man. A.J. Allmendinger has really responded since climbing into this number 44. Super 8 motels on the car this week. They're still without full season sponsorship, which is kind of funny because he has been one of the most productive of the drivers at what is now Richard Petty Motorsports.
And it all started finishing 3rd in the Daytona 500. They finished 9th last week, and now he's sitting 15th in the points, only 34 points out of the top 12.
You know, there's no telling what those two young men are talking about.
Well, what did you and Michael talk about when you were both racing? And Michael come over to you, stick his head in the window.
Yeah, well, that would be the same kind of situation.
Yeah.
I'd be in my car and he'd come over and say, you know, how come your car's so fast, or how come you're so slow, you know? But normally we'd just be talking about setup, and certainly not about where we're going to have dinner. And I'm sure that Kyle wants to know from Kurt, is this that same car you had at Atlanta?
Kyle is 12th on the speed chart. Kurt is 25th. And no, it's not the same car. And speaking of your little brother.
Yeah. Now, Michael and I, we didn't ever talk much about racing. You know, we talked about maybe where we would actually talk about where we're going to have dinner, or, you know, how things were back in Owensboro or something that, you know, we're going to go to the Moonlight when we go back through home, or go for a boat ride on the Ohio River.
I know what you would have talked to him about this week. How in the world did you turn that bad of a run into a 13th place finish last week at Martinsville?
You know, he was, and he was disappointed. He was a little bit down because he felt like he had a really top 10 car, but because he got in that accident early, he really was down on it. And I had to really pump him up because he felt like he'd really disappointed the team, let the team down a little bit. I told him, I said, man, you know, those things happen, and you were able to overcome it.
They overcame a lot.
Overcome a lot, and that shows a lot of fortitude, and I was proud of him.
A good finish at Martinsville and a good start to the season for Michael. Krista?
Mike, I've been monitoring Brian Vickers during this practice. They have actually been in race trim. That's why they're a little bit down on the chart. He said right now his car is pretty good. He said it's real consistent and smooth, just a little bit tight throughout the turns. They've made a couple different changes, but right now they're getting ready to go out to qualifying trim. Brian's pretty happy with his car.
And you know, I know we come to a place like Texas, you think about the Hendrick cars, you think about the Roush cars, but I'm going to tell you what, this kid right here, they better not take their eye off him on Sunday. Just think back to the run he had at Atlanta a few weeks ago.
Right.
Loves the mile-and-a-half racetracks.
Atlanta, Charlotte, Texas, you name it, he's good on the mile-and-a-halves.
48 cars are here for 43 spots, and when we come back, we'll talk to you about the drivers at the bottom of the chart at risk of going home. Here's a look at the drivers who must qualify on time. Regan Smith is the fastest of those, and those who are most at risk of going home: Blaney, Riggs, Keselowski, Almirola, and Todd Bodine.
What's interesting, when you look at 3 of the top 4, that's teams that run a partial schedule. Regan Smith, this will only be his 3rd attempt in his 78 car. Qualified for the Daytona 500, qualified at Las Vegas, and Max Pappas, who could ever forget him making the show at Las Vegas a few weeks ago.
And that explains also, if you look at our top 10 speeds right now, why a lot of those guys are in the top 10. They are nothing but they're full-blown qualifying run every time they go on the racetrack.
Regan Smith, I was reading this week, has never had a DNF. In 40-some Sprint Cup starts, he's finished every one of them.
And that's one thing that led him to be able to win the Rookie of the Year last year, which was great for a rookie.
Jimmy Johnson moves from 12th up to 10th on the board with a 29.16.
Sound like a pretty full-blown qualifying run on the 48. He's taped up. You can see cut it off, and he's coasting back in. That usually means that they don't want to get the engine too hot.
And that's still 3/4 of a second slower than his teammate Mark Martin.
Yeah.
Well, let's drop down 1 car number to the Aussie. Marcus Ambrose, the 47 in his garage. Chris Devoto.
That's right, Mike. He just pulled in. He said right now his car is pretty good. He actually said that run was worse, but because the rear end feels loose, he feels like it's out of the track. They talked about making a wedge adjustment, but they actually are going with track bar and changing the right rear shock. Marcus said if we can just get the back end settled down, I think we'll be okay.
When you look at the speeds they're running here, Mike, especially getting off in the corner like Darrell talked about at the top of the show, 209, or as he said, 2010, you've got to be pretty secure with the back of that race car getting in the corner at those speeds.
And Larry, the wing on the back of these cars always kind of fascinates me. It was just something we're not accustomed to seeing. But the end plates, they play with those a lot. The end plates are those pieces there that go on the end. That's a pretty big piece right there on the end of that wing. Makes a lot of side force. And I'm not sure, maybe we can see the right one. Sometimes they use a curved one on the right side. No, that's flat on this side. It's got a little curve in it. It does.
You can see it from the top down better.
Yeah,
There's a good view of it.
There you go.
Thank you.
Another thing they do is you look right there is you've got also on the end plate, you've got a little gurney lip that they give you an option of running, and that actually creates down force. You see it right there. It's a little 90-degree lip on the end of the end plate.
Right, and what you're trying to do is you're just trying to take the whole side of that race car, the sides, the end of the wing and everything else, and make it into one big foil, one big airfoil.
But you can do a lot with those wings to change the handling characteristics of the car.
Little wicker on top of the rear wing, that's down force, that's a gurney lip, and the little wickers on the end over there, that's another little added piece. That just all those little pieces. And I've been told by a couple of car owners, if NASCAR would just let them take this car to a racetrack, they don't need Ziz wheels, they don't need new parts, they don't need new pieces. They need some sheet metal and some pop rivets that they can make this car better yet.
What else is going on down there, Matt, in the 18 garage?
Well, Mike, for the fans at home, if this 18 Interstate Batteries Toyota looks a little familiar, it should, because this is the same paint scheme that Bobby Labonte won the championship with back in 2000. Kyle Busch has been on Norm Miller, the CEO of Interstate, for a while. He wants to run some throwbacks, some old school paint schemes. He said, look, let's go back and run Bobby's paint scheme. And it just coincided with the fact that on Wednesday night, Bobby was inducted into the Texas Motorsports Hall of Fame. They unveiled this paint scheme that they're going to run here this weekend at that function, and Kyle said he just loves it. He loves all that old school stuff.
Yeah, and so does Dale Jr. You know, we had the Mountain Dew car at Darlington last year, and Jeff Gordon at Talladega this year is going to run a throwback Pepsi Challenger paint job. Those are, I don't know, I think the fans like to see them, and it's a big thrill to see those cars on the racetrack.
Well, it's a great opportunity for us to tell some stories that a lot of our fans
Ron Bouchard likes that. Ron Bouchard really likes that that Pepsi car.
He got a good look at it, didn't he, at the finish line in 1981, right alongside. Not much change at the top of the chart. Carl Edwards moves up into the top 10 in 7th. As Tony Stewart and his former teammate Kyle Busch.
Yeah, well,
talking
you know,
over.
Kurt comes over and he's talking to Kyle. Now Tony comes over, he's talking to Kyle. I wonder what they're talking about, Larry.
Kyle's just a little social butterfly today, isn't he? You know, last weekend was the first weekend of the NASCAR season that Kyle Busch did not win some type of a race.
Yeah, I mean, he got. What are we going to do, Larry? Kyle hasn't won a race in 12 days.
He's on a losing streak.
They were all worried about that on Sirius radio the other day. What are we going to do?
And you know what? He gets out of his truck on Monday and he's mad. He throws his helmet, he throws his Hans device, and he storms off.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I thought that was smart. And you know what? Who did it hurt? He didn't hurt anybody. He was upset. He just got out of his. He did the same thing at Bristol.
Not quite. Because at Bristol, he left the car at the walkover in turn 3. Somebody had to go get it. At least at Martinsville, he did bring it to pit road. That was nice.
Now what is in turn 3 at Bristol? The tunnel, the gate, the way out.
Good point.
See Joe Nemechek here in the 87 car, trying to see exactly where he is on the board. Of course, he's one of the go-homers. He's actually 24th. Good to see a little bit of signage, at least on the hood of that race car. Yep. Huckleberry's barbecue sauce. Again, we talked about that company at Atlanta. Whenever you sit on the pole, they come to your shop and cook the entire shop a big barbecue lunch.
Good deal. David Gilliland, 21st right now. This is his 6th lap of practice. CapitalWindow.com Chevy. And Scott Speed, among the rookies right now, Joey Logano's 33rd. Scott Speed is 38th in the Red Bull car. Car looks like it's down in the racetrack pretty well, and here is Robbie Gordon going the other way. Gordon has the 3rd fastest speed of this session. He had rolled down there past the lineup line, but didn't go out on the racetrack. So I believe they called him back. Well, no, so he wouldn't be in harm's way.
No, I think he may be waiting for an opening.
Go after this 47 car?
Yeah, trying to find a hole to get into where he's, nobody's in his way. He's on the qualifying run.
There you go. And there is Marcus Ambrose. We've told you a couple of times throughout the weeks. This, I believe, is the final week where you can bid to own Marcus's helmet and some other paraphernalia to benefit the volunteer firefighters fighting the bushfires in Australia. And as the weekend goes more, we will tell and show you more about this great charity initiative that you can read all about and participate in at marcusambrose.com.
We had him on our trackside show last week at Martinsville, and he was sharing with Daryl, Steve, Jeff, and myself just how popular that NASCAR racing has become over in Australia, New Zealand, and areas over there. Said it is huge as far as popularity.
I tell you, this car right here, Robbie Gordon's car, is fast. We saw him waiting to get a hole here to get into to make a qualifying run. He's already setting up there in 3rd spot. Let's see what this lap looks like. This car just looks fast.
A little bit slower. It makes me think maybe he doesn't have new tires on for this run here.
I think a lot of times you make a run on stickers and then you'll go in, tape it up, cool it off, and make a run on that same set, which probably, there's a couple of tenths at least in the tires. Yeah.
You know what's interesting about this car is I was talking to that group this morning, this is one of the first brand new cars that they built for this year. And again, these teams keep calling them new generation. And one reason they're new generation, there's not that much you can do with the body, but things just to make the car lighter, where you can put the weight down lower. These things have such a high center of gravity as it is.
Max Pappas, we talked about that great qualifying run that he had earlier this year to make his first Sprint Cup oval race. It looks like he's going to make another one. He is 8th overall and 2nd of the go homers right now. First of the go homers right now, that is. He is fastest.
We're going to run about half the schedule here in 2009, plus a few truck races with Max.
He's fueled by adrenaline.
Yes, sir.
No question about it. He is jacked up about being here. Loves it. Just wants to do good.
Mark Martin had the fastest lap, and he's backed it up with a 28.46. That's only 2/10 off his fastest lap, and it is still the 3rd quickest lap overall. 29.20 that last lap.
Yeah, he's actually he's just starting a new run right here. So we'll see. The teams, and that was another topic of conversation this morning. One reason teams elect to make practice qualifying runs today and race runs is they only have 6 sets of tires to work with today and tomorrow. And one of those sets of tires will be used for qualifying later on this afternoon, so you can't burn all your tires up and get all the goodie out of them today.
At 29.30.
But you know why Mark's doing so well in this car? You think about where he was. He was at Roush Racing, where he had all of his success. Then he went off a couple of years there, run partial schedules. And I won't say he was on teams that didn't have the resources that Hendrick have, but he's certainly got everything he needs right now to be successful, and he's taking advantage of it.
Mark Martin, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Robbie Gordon lead practice. Welcome back to NASCAR Sprint Cup practice. Want to be part of the excitement of the track? It says on this card and right at the top of your screen. There's where you go on speedtv.com, the NASCAR section. Select NASCAR on Speed and send us your email. Krista.
Talking with Ryan Newman, and obviously last week was big for the Stewart-Haas group. Big for you personally, though. You guys are you said you need to continue to ride the momentum. Are you keeping things conservative, or are you ready to bust out?
Well, I'd like to bust out. The good thing is we've gotten better each week. We started, I think, with a 36 at Daytona and have gotten better finish-wise each week. The bad thing is it's getting harder to do that. So, you know, finishing with 2 Stewart-Haas cars in the top 6 last week was great for us, and excited about coming here to Texas. It's a place where I've won, and these guys have run well. And 14 was really good in practice here, so just trying a couple of his things here for qualifying trim.
What are you missing in the car right now?
Time. No, just getting when we're starting in race trim, we'll switch over to qualifying trim and get back out there with the U.S. Army Chevrolet and see what we got for a quick lap.
All right, Ryan mentioned a former winner here, and that always helps when you come to a track where you've had success.
You know, we were talking about Mark Martin being on a track. He didn't really back his time up, so they must not have tires on the car right now. Neither did Dale Jr. He just went out and made another run.
A little bit free into 1, a little bit of tight off of 4.
Now, Reed Sorensen's last lap was his best lap so far in the McDonald's Dodge, and he is 15th.
Yeah, he just jumped up there, you know, with that lap right there.
Which shows you what tires and tape will do, because he was over in like 37th, 38th until that run. So you're going to see some time change at the top of this board, I'm sure.
Matt?
And Mike, the Blue Deuce, Kurt Busch brought his car back in. It's going up on the scales now. They're going to swap over to their qualifying setup, changing a lot of different things over. He did say in his debrief with his crew chief and his other team members, Pat Trison, that the car was tighter rolling through the center, but it just didn't have the feel that he was looking for. Now, with about 30 minutes left, 35 minutes left in this session, they're going to swap over to their qualifying setup.
You know, the only advantage, and Darrell and I were talking about this earlier about how much this racetrack is going to change. The only advantage to maybe doing some race runs today is maybe to A/B some stuff. Maybe it's a shock package. Maybe it's a rear spring package, just so you've got that data already gathered for tomorrow.
Yeah, and actually you A-B-A. You A it, then you change it, that's your B change, then you go back to your A change to document that B change was actually better than what you started with.
Looking at Kyle Busch's car in Bobby Labonte's retro paint scheme. Kristen.
That's right, that championship paint scheme out on the track. Talking with Bobby Labonte, we were talking about, is it weird to see the Interstate Batteries car out there, kind of tribute, giving you honor because of Wednesday night you were inducted in the Texas Motorsports Hall of Fame?
It's different, obviously, and I don't think it's weird on my part, but I mean, it's different. So, but that's something that Kyle and Norm wanted to do, and Kyle really pushed it. So, you know, I think it's awful neat, and I really got to thank those guys for doing that, and everybody at Interstate Batteries, and especially Kyle Busch himself, you know, for wanting to do that. And so we got inducted in the Hall of Fame there. So that was a really neat deal. And Norm and Tommy were all there, and of course all the guys, Max Jones with Yates Racing, and we had a contingent of people from some sponsors and Hall of Fame Racing too. So it was a lot of fun, and a pretty cool award. Terry gave it to me, so that was a neat deal.
And if I were to ask.com you a question, how big is Texas? I mean, for everyone it's big, but when you're from this state as well.
It's huge, obviously, you know. Everybody says, you're going home to Texas. I said, yeah, it's an 8-hour drive from here. That's huge. A lot of places you go through half a dozen states to get through 8 hours. So, but really proud of, you know, being born and raised in Texas, even though I live in North Carolina. I still got some roots here. It's kind of like a big old mesquite tree, you know. I'm pretty dug deep, even though I don't get to come here a lot. But obviously, it's an honor to be, you know, I've got the award the other night, and you know, it's always great to come back and see a lot of friends and family.
From an award on Wednesday to what he hopes is a win on Sunday.
And Mike, the man that's responsible for this Speedway being here in Texas, CEO of Speedway Motorsports, Bruton Smith, he was inducted as well with Bobby Labonte the other night.
A big night to be sure. Mark Martin paces this practice session. Speed's coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice. Brought to you by the Polaris XP sales event going on from now until April 30th. A couple of changes atop the big board. Tony Stewart now third fastest.
32nd, no, now 33rd. He just fell down on the speed chart for Jeff Burton.
David Reagan has jumped into 7th. Jimmy Johnson 8th. Juan Montoya 9th. Jeff Gordon 10th. The whole bottom 4 of that top 10 is new.
It's also 400 cars in the group.
A change. Stremme moves to 9th, popping Jeff Gordon out of the top 10.
400 cars in the top 11 now.
The times come down, speeds go up. There's the rest of the group. And there is David Stremme, carrying the not quite Verizon colors on his Penske Dodge.
So he is by far the fastest Dodge. In fact, he's the only Dodge in the top 20 right now. And speaking of top 20, when you look at the last 5 races this year of David Stremme, not including the Daytona 500, he's had all top 20 finishes. So just kind of quietly nice and solid.
Jeff Gordon now 11th. He has only run 4 laps in this practice. National Guard prominent on the car this week. GED plus. It's graduate equivalent degree. That's what it is.
GED?
Yeah, GED is the equivalent of a high school diploma. And it's a National Guard program that certainly is worth looking into.
Well, what's worth looking into is that practice run right there. Second quickest, right behind Mark Martin at a 28.63. So Mark still has his 2 teammates by a good solid 1/10 and a half.
Yeah. So now not only are there 400 cars in the top 10, there are 1, 2, 3.
Well, Stewart's a Hendrick engine, Hendrick chassis car.
Close
so
enough.
might as well make that 4.
Close enough.
There's your top 4. Todd Bodine, who is on the gotta go list. This is the Gunselman team. Destroyed their primary car in a crash 2 races ago, and was able to obtain another car, which they did run at Martinsville, and now new paint job out here at Texas, but not quite the power to run up there with the big boys. Todd lacks about a 1.5 seconds of the front row, but more importantly of the go or go homers, he lacks about a second of making the show.
They've got a lot of work
What's
to
this
do.
all about now? There's got to be. But you know what I see there is that steering wheel is quite a bit different than what I'm accustomed to seeing. Look at those hand grips. The steering wheel, they actually make those custom for a driver. You grip to make it fit your hand grip.
Look at the spoke position too, Darrell. If that yellow is at the top, wouldn't the spokes normally be like at 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock instead of up there at 1 and 11 o'clock?
Well, I constantly say this, and it fascinates me, is that all the different hand positions that the drivers now have on the steering wheel. Some are at 3 and 9, some are at 11 and 2. Some even hold the wheel at the top and the bottom, and that's I guess it gives you a lot of options.
You know, the one other thing I noticed about that wheel, and I think Matt's with Clint Boyer, maybe he can ask him about it, the top of it was flat. It wasn't a complete circle.
Yeah, it's so you can see over the wheel.
How about it, Matt?
It was sort of like a go-kart steering wheel where it's flat across the top. Now that wasn't your steering wheel. Were you looking what your neighbor may have in his cockpit?
Yeah, I was looking at Jeff Gordon's steering wheel. Did you see that thing? No wonder he's beating me, man. Now I know what I'm missing, but my steering wheel is doing pretty good. It's pretty easy to hold right now. Shane and all the guys in Cheerios Hamburger Helper car have brought another good car, and just trying to sort through some things. Again, using a practice session, a little bit of a test session, trying some things, hopefully be better on Sunday.
What was the biggest thing that you pointed out to Shane about the feel that you've got in your car right now?
Well, we're just working on some springs and bump stop packages, the usual stuff, just trying to find a happy medium. We had a good run here last year, so we got some notes to bring, into this race. So we got a baseline, a decent baseline. I'm just trying to improve it a little bit and try some things, whether they're going to be hit or miss. But, going through the motions, switch over to qualifying trim, takes a little bit of time here, a little bit of a break, but we'll get back after here in a minute.
The 33 team and the entire RCR organization racing with heavy hearts this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Sweat's our truck driver. We're going to miss him. It was very proud to have him driving our truck. He was a hard worker. He was a racer, and we're surely going to miss him.
All right, thank you, Clint.
Thanks.
Looking at that steering wheel, so much Formula One influence continues to kind of dribble into our sport. That looks like a Formula One steering wheel, with the hand grips and the top of the wheel flat.
Yeah, that's what's interesting is the top of the wheel is pretty flat there.
Yeah, and
it's not really rounded, but you sit so low in these cars, Darrell. Is that for better vision?
I would say so. Yeah, you can just it doesn't restrict your vision at all because it's hard. When you see where Clint's hand is, it obviously that's not where you're going to hold this wheel, but that was one of the things that was always a problem. But you had your hand up on top of the wheel, you couldn't see past your hand. So I think they took that into consideration. The other thing is the design of the wheel. The spokes are, as you mentioned, are totally different than what you would normally see. Normally you see them here, here, and here. So there's a lot of thought that's gone into that steering wheel.
And we get word from Pam Miller. That is a Momo wheel, and that is a brand of wheel that is very popular in endurance and sports car racing. Just a little look at something different.
And you don't just put it in your car, you have to get it approved.
Good point. Tonight on Speed, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, it is trackside.
Yippee!
Who with?
We got Mr. Greg Biffle coming on board. He has a win here at Texas Motor Speedway. And then we've got David Gilliland, who's fighting and clawing to try to get back in the top 35 in owner points.
Okay. Here is Joey Logano, who is no longer quicker than top Scott Speed. Speed is 26th. Logano is 29th among the battle of the rookies. A couple things you may want to talk about tonight that are in the wind, according to Jayski.com from the Hartford Courant. A major NASCAR team owner will announce on Monday an Indy 500 entry. And there is a possibility that the NASCAR Sprint Cup banquet and season-ending celebration may be on the move as early as this season.
That's been kind of, I think, lurking out there for a couple of 3 years.
What a perfect place to make that announcement if, in fact, it was to be made this weekend or speculated on.
I'm not sure they're ready to announce anything. Let's just say it's all over the internet.
But based on who owns this place here
Right.
and who's been a big advocate of moving the banquet, this
yes.
would be an appropriate place to leak that out.
Could well be.
It may have gotten leaked out here. Who knows?
Further news as it happens, because there's a bunch of slow leaks around here.
You got that right, brother.
Brian Vickers is not one of them. He is 17th on the speed chart with a 28.97 with his Toyota.
Yeah, the franchise moved up to 6 on the chart there too. I just noticed.
David Hudeman.
Rudeman right out of the way.
He is the fastest Toyota right now with Max Pappas right behind him in that 13 car. Here's a car that's got some work to do. Scott Riggs in this 36 car of Tommy Baldwin's. Right now he's next to the slowest of the go homers. He's in 42nd position in this 36 car, so got some work to do. By virtue of the field being set by points last week at Martinsville, that's the first race they have been in since making the first 2 races of 2009.
Now, Dave Blaney is usually up near the top of the go-home list. Right now, he is 31st overall, which puts him 7th among that group. 8 of them will make the show. And one of those drivers, Bill Elliott, has the past champions provisional if needed. So let's assume 7 drivers on time, plus Bill Elliott, will be in the race.
You won't know how fast this car can go until it's time to qualify, because more than likely they're saving little tires and whatnot to put on that car to qualify with.
It's a 29.47 for Blaney, does not improve his position on the big chart. Krista.
We've got Michael Waltrip out of the car. Michael, we talked about Marcus Ambrose at the start of this. We talked about Rudeman. So let's talk about your car. Where are you and what do you need in the car to be better here at Texas?
Well, I just need speed, obviously. We started off in race runs and made some major changes. Rudeman came here and tire tested and loved his car. So we came just like him, and it just didn't work for me. I didn't like the feel the front end gave me. So Booty made some changes, and we were better on our last run, but then we had to bail off that and get on to qualifying. So we're going to make a pass at that. But I think right now there's 3 MWR cars in the top 10. And you'd say, well, aren't you one of them? But Larry, Mike, and Darrell will point out I'm not. I'm at the bottom, but I'll climb up through there. Marcus Ambrose, Rudeman, and Max Pappas is in one of our cars too, and they're really fast. So I just have to get going. I got to be faster.
Well, let's have some fun. We're in Texas. Would you classify yourself as a cowboy?
No, I don't think so. I'm more of a normal guy. Like, I don't rope things or wrestle bulls or ride horses. My daughter's a cowgirl. She races horses, and that's fun to watch. But I don't like it when people that aren't cowboys try to act like one, so I really don't ever get on that road.
Well, I want to point out Michael Waltrip just said he's a normal guy.
And I didn't realize he was at the bottom of the board. Did you, Larry? I would have never known that if he hadn't mentioned it.
I didn't realize he was normal.
Practice rolls on. Pre-qualifying practice. You will see pole qualifying later today, right here on Speed for Sunday's Samsung 500. Busch has kind of struggled to get off the right side of the page here. Positions 26 to 48 in this practice.
Well, you know, Larry said that's a new car and they didn't bring the Atlanta car, and I totally disagree with that theory. I just think you had a car that good at Atlanta. What's the next race we can run it at? Texas. Bring it to Texas. If something happens to it, worry about Charlotte when we get there. You can't save cars. I've never been a big fan of that.
Whoa, there we go. He's on the right side of the board now, the left side, that is.
Every now and then you build a new car and it's actually better than the old one, and you bring it to Texas.
And he's the first thing that he's even flirted with that time that Mark Martin laid down. He's only 2/100 slower right now.
I'm totally convinced.
Felt good, 1 and 2.
I'm totally convinced he'd be on the pole if he had that old car, though.
He is second fastest, just 2/100ths off the time that Mark Martin laid down at the start of this session. How about that?
Amazing.
Now he just jumped ahead of Jimmy Johnson on the big board. Here's Matt.
Mike, 400 cars in the top 6. Jimmy Johnson looking very strong. Debriefing with crew chief Chad Canassi, basically saying the bumps down in turns 1 and 2 unsettled him briefly, but the ride was very comfortable. Chad's going to put a set of sticker tires on the 48, top them off with some Sunoco race fuel, and go back out and make one more run as time is getting away from us here in this final practice session before qualifying. About 15 minutes or so left. They're going to go out and make one more run.
I like this, Darrell. Here's what's my car's doing. What's your car doing? How are they different? What can I do different? What do you need to do different?
Yeah,
I like this.
Well, this is Hendrick Motorsports philosophy. Share information, talks among yourself. Dale Jr. should be in there. Mark Martin should be in there. I mean, obviously they're all on the same team, but when you got something going on, you got a fast race car, why? And let's talk about what you have that I don't have, and that's kind of the way Rick likes to see this thing work.
Well, they were having a good laugh earlier, and they are right next to each other on the speed chart, 3rd and 4th, so things are going well.
Larry, you know how we know we got a good tire here and the cars are sticking pretty good? Because I hadn't heard but one comment. I just heard it about the bumps in 1 and 2.
Yeah.
When the tires are not very good and the car hits those bumps, it'll slide around, move around. But when you got grip in the tires, you hardly even notice them.
That's exactly right. Yeah, because we've been hearing about that for the last few years coming here, how bad the bumps are in 1 and 2.
When those tires are sticking to whatever's underneath of it, you don't hear many complaints.
Jeremy Mayfield, the all-sport Toyota, just ran another mock qualifying run, not as quick as his first one. And he is at risk of missing the show here. Mike Bliss in the 09, which has tried to run all the races and missed the show last week because of the rainout of qualifying, and it was the only car that had run all the races so far that had to go home. But Bliss is in good shape here right now, 28th in practice.
They've improved this old car since the season started. They missed a couple of races. Sterling Marlin drove it, missed a couple of races. Mike got in it, made a couple of races.
He made the race to Atlanta.
Yeah, and it seems like the car has definitely gotten better as we've gone along here.
Yeah, that was sad last week at Martinsville. Sterling Marlin was in that car. They were 13th quickest in that practice session. They were going to be in great shape till the rains moved in.
Max Pappas, another part-timer who's going to try to make this race. And he is the fastest of all the go-and-go homers by more than a tenth, well, about a tenth of a second.
Well, he's
over
10th. He's 10th in the speed right now.
Yep.
That is super impressive.
You know what? They'll feel good about that run right there. It's a tenth off of his fastest lap. But when you look at a lot of our guys that ran faster than Max, a lot of them didn't go out and even remotely come close to backing up the other lap they'd run.
And just think about it. This track is not, it's not like he's never seen it before. He's raced here a lot in an Indy car. So it's probably a piece of cake. He slowed down 20 miles an hour.
About 15 minutes left in this practice session. And Robbie Gordon was in the top 5 for about the first half of the session. He's still in the top dozen in his Jim Beam Toyota.
Came close to backing up his earlier lap from a 28.80 earlier to a 28.84 that time.
Krista.
Jamie McMurray is getting ready to roll out of his garage stall. At the start of this practice session, he said he was tight, but on that last run, he said into 3, he was a little free, still tight in the middle, but a little free off. They went back a little bit on a front end change they made earlier, and the best way Jamie summed it up, he said, I am out of control to run that fast.
Wow. He's 36th on the chart right now.
And you know, that's a fact. That's a great explanation by a driver. When the car is right, it's so easy. And I don't mean that in terms of, you know, it's not so easy, but it's enjoyable to drive a fast race car when it's handling good. It's a nightmare to drive a fast race car when it's handling bad.
Denny Hamlin just went from 33rd up to 19th with that lap. Let's see, where's the Rocket? 30th right now.
This may be a fuse lit run here.
He actually just finished a run there. That's his fastest lap. And he's 30th quickest. And his teammate Tony Stewart is 8th quickest right now to 28.73.
Casey Mears is 23rd on the chart. He is just starting a run. He's run 20 laps.
You know, I just want to see this kid. I just want to see him stay in this car, stay with his crew chief, stay with his team for a period of time, an extended period of time. Seems like every time you turn around, he's getting shuffled off to some other deal, some other team, some other crew chief. I really think he can drive. I don't think that's the issue. I think he needs to stay somewhere where he can develop some camaraderie with his crew chief and his team, and give him the best shot he's had. And I think Childress will be willing to do that.
And Darrell, I get a feeling that Casey's the type of driver, if he could just have a couple of good runs, his confidence level would come up, and I think you'd see more good runs follow.
Yeah, and Gil's probably the same way. I mean, you know, you get Gil Martin as crew chief, you got to, if you're Gil Martin in that crowd that was working on that 07 car, and you see what Boyer's doing, and you know, you say, well, gosh, you know, we should be doing that well too.
Yeah.
Well, Jamie Mack here faces pretty much the same situation at Roush Fenway Racing. Seems like the more teammates you have, that's who you measure yourself against first.
But I like that. You know what? If I'm having a team meeting, looser, not good.
Well, I think the big story at Roush Fenway, Mike, as 2009 gets to a close, is we know this is the last year by the NASCAR rules that they can have 5 race teams. When we start 2010, Roush Fenway, they have to be shaved down to 4 race teams.
And I think 3 years ago that would have been a serious problem, but now with the Yates Racing organization kind of under the umbrella of Roush, so to speak, it means that Roush Fenway will have 4 teams and maybe Yates Racing will have 3. I don't think it's going to be as big of a change as it looked like it was going to be when the rule was first announced.
I totally agree.
So you have options.
Yeah.
You have options. But here's the other thing too. I'm not so sure that that's not one of those issues that the economy would say, okay, boys, we're going to put that. I don't want to take any team out of racing right now, and I don't want to have to affect any organization right now. So if you could field 5 cars, we're glad to have you.
David Rudiman on his out lap. He was 7th with his earlier run of 28.71. And that's only about 2.5 tenths off pole.
Thing is going right now. I'll tell you what,
it's going to be a good lap.
Sure
really
looks that
is.
way.
That thing carried the mail down that back straightaway, and he really went through the middle of 3 and 4.
Plus, he's getting a little draft off that car in front of you. Get some draft. You're not a lot, but you're going to get a little bit. So he ought to have pretty fast time.
Jumps up to second quickest, 28.48. He is 1/1000th of a second quicker than Kurt Busch.
That dog right there, old Lucky Dog, she'll hunt, baby.
Oh, look, he's got his tongue hanging out and everything. That dog's tired.
Give it a bone.
Closing 9 minutes of this practice session, you will see pole qualifying here a little later on this afternoon on Speed as Clint Boyer, the Cheerios hamburger helper car, out there climbs up to 11th with this run. His best lap of the day, 28.77.
I like this team. I like Boyer, like his crew chief. Have I ever mentioned to you I like Shane Wilson?
You like Shane Wilson and you like Darian Grubb.
Have I mentioned that? If I haven't, I'd like.
I'm going to line you up a lunch with both those guys.
Who's that Derek guy?
Oh,
never mind.
No,
Don't even go there. Do not go there.
Let's go to Krista.
Well, I know you guys also like A.J. Allmendinger coming off of a 9th place finish last week in Martinsville. He would love to improve that even one position, because then it would be a Super 8 here at Texas. He's up to 15th in points. But here's the problem he's been fighting in this practice. No right front grip. He said the car earlier in the session would just take off when he got on the throttle and would go up the wall. It was the same problem he had at Vegas, and that's the bad news. Las Vegas was his worst finish of the season.
I talked to his crew chief, Sammy Johns, the other night, and you know, you mentioned it, Mike. Right now, I think that sponsorship is only in place through the Coca-Cola 600 at Lowe's in late May. But like Sammy said, we're just going to keep going like we've got sponsorship in place.
Look at that, the franchise.
Oh my goodness!
And that's his dad,
That's
Buzzy. And Buzzy's trying to get it. He's telling David what he did wrong. I mean, what else do dads do? He goes over and says, "Now, son, if you'd have just held it down a little lower, a little longer."
Well, he did nothing wrong. Second on the big board.
But you know, my 17-year-old son, Brandon, Randy LaJoy put the name on him, the franchise. And Brandon has pointed out to me that you can't name yourself the franchise. Someone else has to name you that. And besides, Brandon is franchise with a Z.
Franchise with a Z. Okay.
So, but he says you can't name yourself. Someone else has to do that for you.
Does this mean we can't call Kyle Busch Rowdy anymore?
No, I think it just has to do with the word the franchise.
Oh, I see. Well, he named himself Rowdy. Kyle did.
And I think that's fine. You just can't name yourself the franchise.
Okay. Well, I don't know. You know, since Brandon is the only driver in your stable, Larry, right now, I guess he is the franchise.
And he points that out to me quite frequently.
Except instead of spelling it with a Z, I just spell it with a $sign.
Yeah.
Randy LaJoy is actually the one that gave him that name.
That's the whole point with Brandon. I mean, he is the franchise.
And he points that out to his sisters quite often.
Oh, boy. You saw Paul Menard there. He is 19th quickest after that run. His best of the day. Got about 6 minutes left here. David Gilliland. Now he is in the show. He is not on the. No, he's not. He's on the go or go home list. Excuse me. He wants to be in the show, and he is second fastest to the go or go homers.
24th. This reminds me of airplane. 25th. 26.
So yeah, gate 20. That's what it was. Gate 27.
That's right. Yeah.
28. We'll be arriving at yeah.
You know, Mike, this has that normal look about it.
Look at those sunglasses. Oh my gosh. Have you ever?
No, I've never.
One.
Wow.
There you go. If Jack had a pair of those sunglasses to go with that hat, now I'm telling you, he'd be styling and profiling.
Well, the worried look on Jack's face. So only 2 of his cars in the top 10. Edwards 6th and Reagan 9th.
That look stays on that face.
Yeah,
he could have all 4 cars, all 5 cars in the top 10. It would still look that way.
Wow. But Mike, what I was going to point out is the fact that it has this normal look to it. The difference in the go or go homers right now. Now this is practice, but the difference between Scott Speed and Joe Nemechek right now is only 1/100th of a second.
All right. Matt.
Well, Mike, we talk about pressure, and if you're the franchise and the legend, the Hall of Famer, his dad Buzzy, went to victory lane about a week ago with your race car, your Dirt IMCA modified. A little bit of pressure on you now to get this car to victory lane.
Yeah, he said I better set my program up an Aaron Stream machine. He's got his own Aaron Stream machine. He run that at East Bay Raceway last week and was able to win a feature with that. So I'm really proud of him. But now he's up here and the pressure's on, so we better perform.
Performing very well. P2 so far in this session. Mike?
Mark Martin, David Rudiman, Kurt Busch, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon. Those are the Fast 5 with less than 5 minutes to go in this practice. Here's the Advanced Auto Parts Friday menu on Speed. NASCAR Live coming up next. We'll take you to 4:30 p.m. when we'll be back to bring you NASCAR Sprint Cup qualifying. NASCAR Smarts involving none of us, fortunately. That's at 6:30 p.m. And then Trackside Live at 7. Greg Biffle on Trackside Live, who just jumped up to 4th on the speed chart as this practice session winds up. 2 minutes to go.
But you know, Mark Martin goes out his first lap puts down a 28.467, and everybody's been trying to catch him ever since. And that was his first lap and his fastest lap.
David Rudeman and Kurt Busch came close, about 2/100ths of a second behind him, but the mark was set early and it has stayed at the top of the charts.
You got to believe if, you know, when you get serious here now and you go for a real under Big Bend down here, that time will probably come down a little bit more.
4 Chevys, 3 Fords, 2 Dodges in the top 10, and just 1 Toyota, that of David Rudeman, in second. David Stremme, top 10.
And this is another run for David Stremme. He just started a lap there in that 12 car, so he's trying to better that 9th place run.
Sam Hornish on his out lap. Last couple of opportunities here to post fast times in this practice, and the fellows were a little concerned about as far as making the show. Scott Speed, Dave Blaney, Jeremy Mayfield, Scott Riggs, and Todd Bodine are the slowest of the go-homers. There's a look at Riggs. And there is the update. The bottom 5 in qualifying will load up and head home. So there's some work to do there.
Casey Kane just finished a run, and actually he's 27th quick, so he's not over here where Stremme is. Stremme's 9th.
Yeah, he's a 10th.5 slower from what he ran earlier in the day. 29.05 to a 28.90 a little earlier in the practice session.
2 of the Penske cars in the top 10, with Kurt Busch 3rd and Stremme 9th.
'09 Mike Bliss, he's 41st right now.
He should get this lap in because the red and the black flag just came out, so he should be able to run it all the way around, trying to better that speed that he ran earlier of a 29.07. He's only run 6 laps in this practice session, and he actually slows down a 10th.
So 7 drivers plus Bill Elliott will time their way into the field. And here overall, these are all drivers that are locked in the top 17 places, which includes Joey Logano in 17th. Nice run for Joey.
Pretty diverse bunch of guys in that top 10 with only 1 Toyota up there. That's kind of surprising.
Max Pappas, the only go or go homer in the top 25.
You know what's amazing? If you take Daytona out of the equation, because it's a totally different schedule down there for speed weeks, but of the 6 hour-and-a-half practice sessions we've had on Friday, Mark Martin has now won 3 of those practice sessions. And remember, he backed it up by sitting on 2 poles.
That's right.
And he does it. It's usually the first lap
right
on the
out of the
racetrack.
box.
I mean, which is kind of almost unheard of. You know, you think you'd have to shake it down a little bit.
Well, the man's in a hurry.
Guess so.
Look at those camera positions up there. Our cameramen yesterday, setting up their cameras, had to be tethered to the roof. The winds here were 35 miles an hour, and attaboy for all of our fellows to get things up and running so we could bring you this practice today.
If they'd close the door to the Hollywood Hotel down there, it would cut some of that out.
The hot air or the wind?
The wind.
Ah.
Both.
All right, we're going to NASCAR Live. We'll be back later this afternoon with NASCAR Sprint Cup qualifying. Mark Martin wins practice.